Thank you all for coming. We're here to talk about you and everybody like you, people who eat food, and how to get them to waste less.
They said a bottle was just a bottle.
Oh. We're not. Uh-oh. You better unplug the audio. So thank you all. My name's Dana Gunders. I work with NRDC. We are partners on the ad you just saw, which is part of our Save the Food campaign, which is an ad council. Thank you. A partnership with the Ad Council, which is kind of like the nonprofit arm of the advertising industry, who brought you things like Smokey the Bear and Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk, and now they're bringing you Save the Food. And so I was just going to really quickly flip through some of the other assets of the campaign. The great thing about the Ad Council campaign, it's aimed at consumers, and everything you see here is free and available for use. There are even ways to put your own logo on it if you'd like. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that material is available. And right now what Save the Food is really working towards is trying to kind of galvanize a movement and really start to shift the culture, like seed a shift in the cultural paradigm around wasting food. But it's kind of operating at the 50,000 foot level. And so after I flip through those, we're going to hear about some people who are really digging in more on specific topics or in more trying to engage consumers, I don't know, more tactically, I guess is the right word. Why don't we all introduce, why does everybody just introduce
We do our
yourselves?
piece now? Is that what you're talking about?
No, just introduce yourself real quick and then
Okay.
we'll go.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm from the Ugly Fruit and Veg campaign.
Hi, I'm Sally Greenberg from National Consumers League.
I'm Erica Hansen from the Rhode Island Community Food Bank.
I'm Ronnie Neff from the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future.
And I'm Leo Pollock from the Rhode Island Food Policy Council.
Okay, great. So, when the Ad Council, when NRDC started looking at what we were going to do next, and we looked at the big picture of food getting wasted across the country and how much there was, what we kept coming back to was consumers, because not only are consumers wasting more in their households than any other single segment of the supply chain, but B, they're bringing their expectations into restaurants and into businesses, and a lot of the waste that's getting driven or that's happening in those institutions is kind of because of these cultural and consumer expectations that we have, expecting a certain size portion when you pay a certain amount of spaghetti to come on the plate when you pay $10, or for things to be available late when the store is closing, things like that. So we saw the campaign as a way to really try to both engage consumers directly, but also start to shift some of that indirectly. And the last reason I think engaging consumers is really important is that people just kind of love this topic, and some people, maybe some among us today, get really jazzed on it, and then they take it into their own life, and maybe they work in a restaurant, or maybe they're planning their own wedding, or maybe they are. I once had these two guys come to me who are electrical engineers, solar engineers, and they were like, "We're going to quit our jobs and redesign the refrigerator," and so you just kind of never know. It's like everyone's a consumer, and you can reach people and really impact whatever spheres of influence that they have through reaching them as people. And so that's, I would say, the third reason I think I like to think it's good to engage consumers. So with that, you guys saw this is the video. I'm just going to run through the campaign assets for the Ad Council. Please go watch it 100 times on YouTube. That'll really get our numbers up. We just hit 1 million, and some random person posted on Facebook, and they got 10 million hits for it. They put black bars over it. I don't know why they got more than we did, but anyways, I'll take it. And of course, there's a website behind this. Please go check it out. This is our out of home series. So these are billboards, bus stops, and they can also be printed as posters. And I'll show you how to find the link. So you can go and print them as posters and hang them up in your bedroom next to that hunky guy shot.
Missed
there's four in this best if used series: milk, chicken, and bread. And depending on the usage, sometimes the tagline says cook it, store it, share it, and sometimes it says cook it, store it, share it, just don't waste it, which is what I prefer. But if it's a billboard and you're driving and they only have 5 seconds to read it, you have to cut it short. So again, this is the print and poster version. You can get it put up near your favorite, at a construction site near you, if you want. And then this is our guerrilla tactics part of the campaign. So though these look like stencils, and you can get them as stencils, they actually, mostly what we've heard is that people want them as stickers that just look like stencils, so it's not as permanent. So this is the SaveTheFood.com website. I'm not going to go into it. You can go visit it yourself. But if you go down to the very bottom, there's a very tiny thing that hopefully will be bigger when I can get the designers to listen to me that says spread the word. And if you click on spread the word, it will take you to another site where you can download all of this artwork for printing. There's a bunch of like shareables for social media. And if you're interested in using any of it or having your logo put on, or it's not quite fitting what you need it for, you can email savethefood@nrdc.org. And we will help you figure out a way to make it work. So with that, that's the 50,000-foot consumer engagement. Let's get into some more specific stuff. I'm going to pass it to Jordan.
Thank you. So I sort of come from the zero waste world, focusing on the materials, end of pipe, all that. I got tired of that, so I wanted to work on higher solutions, reduce and recover being the top two. Hey, that's the name of a conference now. And so I worked with Dana right here on the Zero Food Waste Forum to bring people together to talk about those solutions, people from the waste world, people from the nonprofits and from businesses. Kind of like this event today, a lot in the same way, but sort of in a Berkeley flair, of course. Yes, some food was from a dumpster. And then I also managed the Feeding the 5,000 Oakland with Tristram's inspiration back there, and of course he was there as well. And with that event, I couldn't shake this ugly produce thing we have. About a quarter of all produce in the US is wasted before stores, right? About 20 billion pounds, thanks to ReFed for recalculating that and getting a little closer to a number. I think 6 billion, a little too low. But most of the reason for it being wasted, cosmetics, right? Size, shape, color, mostly size, mostly too big, too small. So it's not taste, not quality, has nothing to do with either of those, or even freshness. There was an ugly fruit and veg boom going on in Europe. Of course, Intermarché with the Inglorious Fruits and Vegetables right there. Some other countries followed suit. But as of a couple of years ago, no major retailer in the US was selling ugly produce, which really isn't ugly. So I thought, could we make food waste activism fun? Access that power of food. I mean, we have this amazing, all right, well, formats suck. Okay, so we have this amazing foodie culture, right? That says food festivals and events. Cooking shows, celebrity chefs, food magazines, foodstagramming, that's what this is right there. So people take pictures of food. People obsess about food. They pay ridiculous sums of money. They go home and watch people cooking food all the time. But yet, food waste. Did we get this kind of attention 2 years ago? No, nothing close to it. So I thought maybe start the Ugly Fruit and Veg campaign, sort of access that power of food, show some images, get people kind of more interested about doing something about food waste. So what exactly is the Ugly Fruit and Veg campaign? Yes, it's on social media. It does post bizarre pictures, yes. It's the 1% of the 1%, sure, but yes. Yeah, it showed pictures that you may have seen somewhere in the wild of animals and things like that. It's nudity, yes, it's nudity. It's the internet. The internet has nudity, right? I mean, that's one, maybe two best things of the internet, depending on who you ask, I don't know. Yeah, nudity. But really, it's about love, right? It's about showing love for food and not wasting it. And most of all, don't get it twisted. There's a lot of produce wasted, Tristram, thank you, that has so much love to give. So what's happened? Insane amount of press attention. I don't get paid for 99.9% of this. but 100+ articles, feature articles over the last year, Today's Show. Tyra Banks was talking about it on her show, messed up my last name, but that's okay. It's Tyra Banks, I don't care. But it's been insane, and then lots of people reposting it and retweeting it. The following just keeps growing. It's over 190 countries now around the world, mostly US and UK, Canada, but people everywhere send me their pictures. Some of them I don't need to see. Too many potato penises. Please don't send me any more potato penises. I don't need them, no more. But yeah, it just keeps growing and reaching new audiences. If you haven't heard of We Heart It, it's for like teenage girls, and yeah, so I'm trying to reach audiences wherever I can. But a lot of people thinking about wasted food. I just don't post pictures. It's more than that. So I write articles. That one over there on the left is one of my favorite ones. I called 25 states in the country to sort of put together farm-to-food bank programs. So a lot of what you may see in the news is selling it in a store. But there's farm-to-food bank programs that do pay farmers maybe 15, 25 cents a pound, somewhere in there, to get produce to those in need. There's hundreds of millions of pounds being saved by those very programs that are state-funded. So it pays farmers like the labor cost to get it to someone in need for the stuff they can't donate. I mean, they can only donate so much. So Civil Eats, if you can check that one out, people need to write more about that issue. It's amazing work. I support some of the friends I have or organizations I'm an advisor for, like Hungry Harvest, and then petitions. Of course, that's what we're really focusing on right now. Change.org has been amazing. Poulin, there you are right there. If you need to work on petitions at all, you'll want to after this. Poulin is right there. Please contact him. They're doing really amazing things. One of the petitions was to Whole Foods and Walmart, and we did get Whole Foods to talk to us. We connected them to Imperfect. Didn't think it would happen after talking to them and their response, but hey, they're selling it with Imperfect now, and it's doing really well. So that's been amazing, and now we're focusing on Walmart. So yes, that's me. So we have this petition just to Walmart now, and we're going to be delivering it to Walmart headquarters in short amount of order, me and Poulin and then some other people. So if you want to help with that effort, there's the link right there. And as well, we're actually working with Huffington Post, or I'm working with Huffington Post and Change right now. If you didn't see what they're doing, and I think are Casey and Alex in the audience maybe? Can we ever, no? They're probably in the media room interviewing a million people. Huffington Post started a new project called Reclaim. It's unlike anything you've ever seen from any news media company. They're really hammering at this issue. 4 articles today alone. We filmed something really fun in Washington Square Park with Ugly Produce yesterday. They're doing so many things. So as much as you can support Huffington Post coming up, there's things that are going to be flying over the next few months. But all of this is with imagery at center stage. A lot of what I was used to in the industry was kind of the boring pictures of this. Stage stuff in a garbage can, right? Is this going to inspire anybody to really prevent food waste? It may fit the billing insert, and yes, we've all done it. I've probably done one of these before in the past too. It fits a billing insert and it checks a box. But who's really going to be inspired by this? So that's why I focus on highlighting food, kind of like what chefs do, like Ishmael, right? Highlighting the amazing qualities in food that really inspire us, not this. So, okay. All right, well, let's just go back. So anyway, I kind of boil it down to 4 things for people. Yes, there's more, but 4 main things that everybody can really do with Ugly Produce. So of course, you can try to buy it, farmers markets or stores talk about it. You can sell it and educate it. A lot of it is putting pressure on grocers. Schools. I have not yet found a school district that is buying Ugly Produce intentionally. I know of some that are looking into it, but this is amazing. They could save possibly 50% and get more healthy produce to their students if they went this route. I know one that's going in the next year, so hopefully that'll catch on. And then the last one, what did I put there? I think it's, oh yeah, governments. Governments supporting farm-to-food bank programs. They're amazingly effective. I think Oregon Food Bank estimated it was for every $1, 9 meals can come out of saving produce. So government supporting farm-to-food banks are huge. And then, of course, gleaning as well. And all of it is accessing that power of food because we love food, right? And food loves us back if we love food. Thank you.
I think I have exactly 1 slide. So I won't be nearly as entertaining as Jordan, but thank you, Jordan. That was a lot of fun. And it's really an honor for me to be here. I'm Sally Greenberg. I'm with the National Consumers League, and well, as far as I know, we're the only national broad-based consumer organization that's really focusing on as much attention as we are on the issue of food waste. And I've got Ali Shaklir with me, and she does all of our food waste policy work and has done a great job for us. And I also want to say that it's really an honor to be in a panel with Dana Gunders, who's the Eve of food waste. She's been talking about this before anyone else I know, and I know when we were first getting into it, we were trying to get in touch with Dana, and it was very hard to get in touch with. And we said, why won't Dana Gunders call us back? We want to talk to her about food waste, because Dana Gunders was very busy working on this project and many other projects. So let me tell you a little bit about how we got into it, why we got into it. My organization has been around since 1899. It was a progressive era organization founded to work on both consumer and worker issues, and really focused on child labor back in 1899 when there were 2 million kids working in America. One of the first things we did in 1904 was we displayed, let's just establish our bona fides in the food area, we displayed green beans at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, revealing to fairgoers that the canned green beans that were on display had been adulterated with green dye. That was 1904. In 1906, the National Consumers League was involved in getting past the first federal legislation on food and meat. We supported the Safe Food and Drugs Act and the Meat Inspection Act of 1906. The Meat Inspection Act was a direct result of Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle. Since that time, we've worked really hard to ensure that food and drugs and other consumer products are safe and healthy and effective. Now, the National Consumers League is committed to this issue of food waste just because we think there's a really big disconnect in how we talk about food. And one of our favorite statistics is that 75% of people think that they waste more food than the average family, which tells us that people are somewhat aware of the problem, although I think we have a ton of work to do among consumers, but they don't understand, and we've done a lousy job of giving them tools and guidance about how to reduce food waste, and there's a ton of mixed messages, which hopefully I'll have time to get to later on in my comments. But so I'm going to talk about three or four of the things that we've done in the area of food waste from a consumer perspective. The first one is, the first thing I want to mention is that we held a food waste summit in Washington, D.C. in May, and we did so with the Keystone Policy Center in Washington. And the Keystone Policy Center is known for bringing groups together on intractable issues from across the spectrum. They work on why monarch butterflies were endangered, and the bee problem that we were seeing, in the last couple of years with the bee population declining with no real explanation. I serve on their board, and they created a very nice template for bringing together groups like the grocery manufacturers, the Food Marketing Institute, the National Restaurant Association, Tyson Food, and others who are all concerned about the issue of food waste. So they have a number of these groups on their board. So we ran this conference, this summit together, and brought together government, environmental groups, industry, to identify collaborative strategies for engaging consumers. And at our summit and other food waste meetings, we continue to hear the same conversation, that we know food waste is a problem in the U.S., but we don't have data that breaks down the level of food waste or identifies what type of foods are being thrown out most. One of the things that we thought was kind of a specialty area of ours is that kids make up one of the larger categories of consumers and therefore generate themselves a good deal of food waste. And in order to make real progress by 2030, we know that the USDA and the EPA have committed to reducing food waste in the U.S. by 50% by the year 2030. We needed to start gathering numbers related to the younger demographic. After all, they're the generation that's going to inherit this problem and have to grapple with it once the rest of us are not around anymore. So NCL and the two agencies, EPA and the USDA, are going to be launching a national food waste audit competition within school cafeterias across the country. Schools that participate in NCL's education and financial literacy literacy program, which is called Life Smarts. It reaches over 125,000 students, and those students are going to make up the teams for the competition. Students are going to learn how to run their audits and have the opportunity to implement strategies to reduce waste. Audit numbers will help students understand this global problem at a community level. The results will also help inform experts and policymakers of what kind of waste we are generating and what solutions work best to reduce it. Second, ReFed and other experts have pointed to date labeling standardization as a practical way to make food waste reduction easier for consumers. This push came out of a concern that consumers have trouble interpreting the many confusing and different labels and language on food products. However, we didn't have solid data to back up these assumptions, and that's why my organization partnered with the Harvard Food Law Policy Clinic, which is sponsoring this conference, and Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, which is Ronnie's group, to conduct a survey asking consumers how to interpret date labels. Some of our key findings you can see in the infographic. Yay! Okay. Infographic above, 84% of consumers at least occasionally discard food when it's close to or past the date on the label. 37% of consumers always or usually discard food close to or past the date on the label. And 62% of consumers either think date labels are federally regulated or they don't know who regulates date labels. Our findings demonstrate the need for a more streamlined date labeling system that consumers can refer to as a quality indicator rather than an indicator of safety. We are excited that our data is being put to good use with the introduction of the part of the bill that Congresswoman Pingree talked about this morning to clarify and standardize date labeling introduced. And of course, the Senate companion to her bill is Senator Richard Blumenthal, Connecticut Senator, his Food Date Labeling Act. So, and there, as Congresswoman Pingree talked about, the language best if used by seems to be the consensus 4 words to reduce the problem of people throwing food out because they assume that it means that it's no good anymore. So my third point is that we are hoping to draft a request to President Obama related to the government's commitment to reducing food waste by 50% in 2030. It's certainly a laudable goal, but we want to see what those concrete steps are that are being identified by government agencies and to get us to that goal. And we think, given the size of the federal government and federal facilities that serve and discard food, and we're talking about the Department of Defense, the VA, federal agencies across the U.S., a good place to start would be to put some protocols and practices in place for reducing the federal government's food waste footprint. Federal agencies have already made good strides with there is the Planning for Federal Sustainability and the Sustainability in the next decade. That's an executive order in place. And many state prisons around the country are actually green prisons. We did a little research into this, and we're surprised at how many states have a green prison system where prisoners are involved in the day-to-day of planting gardens and composting and really preparing themselves, maybe master gardener degrees and things like that, preparing themselves to get out into the world and get a job based on that relies on some of those skills. So there's certainly space to enhance these programs with a food waste initiative at federal agencies. So that gives you an overview of how we are engaging consumers and harnessing their power in the marketplace to address the issue of food waste reduction. I do think that there's so many disconnects out there, the 2-for-1s, the giving people, you pay a little bit more and you get a lot more popcorn at the movie theater, a lot more drink at 7-Eleven. All of those things contribute not only to our problem with obesity, but also our problems with food waste. So those disconnects it's going to take a long time to sort through those. We have a lot of work to do. This isn't a simple problem, and I'm looking forward to being front and center as a consumer organization that kind of understands how consumers digest all of this information and how we can do a whole lot better in clarifying our messaging to them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we have our team from Rhode Island here. Leo and Erica. Leo's going to go first? Okay.
My name's Leo Pollock. I'm the network director for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. It's a pleasure to be in a room where other people, I've noticed, are like looking in compost bins and things like that. Usually my wife is the one who like rolls her eyes as I'm the one checking out these. So I serve as the network director for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. I also run a commercial composting business, so I think about waste a lot. Here to talk a little bit about a program that the Food Policy Council has been involved with in partnership with the EPA since 2013. And then Erica from the Rhode Island Community Food Bank is going to talk a little bit about the work they're doing as part of the program we're running now. So real quick introduction. The Food Policy Council was started in 2011, really taking a food systems approach to looking at issues around strengthening the food system and the food sector in Rhode Island. So waste is one of our goals. Trying to push Rhode Island's food system towards zero waste is a goal, but obviously part of a system where we're looking at production, demand for local food, access issues, general environment issues around healthy working conditions, and really about boosting the economic side of food in the state as well. There we go. In terms of our structure, we started a partnership with EPA Region 1 2013, and we ran a pilot with their program called Food Too Good to Waste. And so this was 2013, 2014. Rhode Island was one of the states that did sort of a pilot rollout, and I'll give you kind of the 20-second overview of the program. It was basically a 6-week program where for the first 2 weeks, you essentially asked people to measure all the non-edible or all the edible waste that they produced. So the goal was, peels and things that wouldn't have been edible, but essentially any leftovers that were thrown away, any rotting produce that would otherwise have been edible. And I put this up because there is a power in asking people to measure these in clear containers. So literally, this sitting on the counter, some people put it in the fridge, starts to generate a conversation around what you're wasting if you're literally seeing that as opposed to putting it in the trash where it's not visible. So sort of a 2-week baseline, ask people to measure. Then you do a workshop that teaches them a few different tools, which I'll talk about in a second. And then for the last 4 weeks of the program, they essentially look at then continue to measure, but implementing one or a few of those tools. And the idea is at the end of that 6-week program, people kind of have a different awareness, attention to what they're producing or what they're throwing away, and hopefully have some tools that they can continue that will sort of change their general behavior around that. So we ran that program 2013, 2014, 40 different households in groups of 10. And the goal was really to try to do, this was in partnership with EPA to test out, is this working and what are kind of the tweaks that need to happen. So we ran it with actually a range of income levels. One was sort of our friendlies, people who we knew but wanted to kind of get used to it. We ran it at sort of a higher end, higher income housing condominium. And then we also ran it in partnership with the Providence Housing Authority, so specifically with a low-income population in Providence as well. In general, the outcomes of that was overall in the program, we saw about a 60% reduction by weight, average per household, and like a 26% reduction by volume. So pretty substantial. I mean, people really noticed once they started seeing what they were throwing away and implementing these tools that they reduced the actual amount. So 2015 and up till now, we're still in this program. We started another program actually running this Food Too Good to Waste program. The idea with this was, could we come up with a way to work with a number of organizations and agencies to actually sort of a train the trainer model? So could we train staff, walk them through this formal program, and then kind of let them run wild, implement it in a way that actually works for them as an organization, and not necessarily as that full program, but pick and choose pieces that work given the programs you run, the clients you serve, and kind of customize it. And so that's where we are right now. 5 partners. So the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, Erica's going to talk next, the Pawtucket Housing Authority, Providence Housing Authority, Newport Housing Authority. Those are 3 of the most urban areas in Rhode Island. And then also a group called the African Alliance Rhode Island, which works with African refugees and immigrants. And so just to go through, we sort of customized the tools that are part of this program. I'll go through there. There were 3 that we really focused on. Starting from the left, one of the tools sounds, obvious, but to actually make a shopping list every time you go shopping. And the phrase we use a lot is shop your kitchen first. So sort of take stock of what you have to make sure you're not, like we saw in the strawberry video, buying something you already have, pushing the previous thing to the back of the fridge, which is where it's more likely to rot and then get tossed. Second thing is, if you people want them, I have some, eat me first. We kind of customized these into stickers. We also did translation of all these materials into Spanish as well. But the idea was to put an actual sticker and identify things that you need to use first, so there's a visible queue in your fridge, rather than just sort of, again, pushing things to the back, putting newer things in front. And then the last one is actually just a general storage guide on where to keep different kinds of produce and vegetables to prolong freshness and make sure that's going to offer as much nutrition. So a few lessons that I just wanted to talk through and kind of what we've learned with both working directly with consumers and then working with organizations, agencies that are also working with clients. As Erica, I think the food bank is, even though we're mid-program, one of the most successful programs to really roll this out. And I think that's a testament to really having kind of structures and programs in place and being open and flexible in terms of how to incorporate these into those programs. So an important one is also if there's cooking demonstrations or cooking lessons that are part of it, these can really lend themselves well about how are you using produce that, if you have random sort of odds and ends, how can those get incorporated into a meal? How are you doing things like buying what's in season and starting to incorporate this sort of like cooking and waste side as two pieces of two sides of the same coin. Another one is, one of the things we're seeing actually some sort of disconnect with the EPA program is in a lot of low-income households, housing situations, transportation options, and kind of shopping patterns don't necessarily match the tools. So, if people have very limited refrigeration space, giving them tips on where to keep things in the refrigerator, not necessarily is relevant. And so what we're sort of realizing is some of these tools may be more appropriate for middle income to upper income populations and actually less relevant for lower income populations. Last one, and I can't emphasize this enough, is the cooking skills piece. I think part of what we learned, especially in rolling out the first part of this program, was having people who are comfortable with cooking or introducing them to part of that as a way of reducing food waste is actually really helpful, and I think something we often overlook. And so, that gets into this wider food system issue that, yes, it's about waste, but it's also, again, about comfort in the range of fruits and vegetables people are eating, how comfortable they are with being flexible with recipes or substituting things for recipes. And I think those are there's a wider issue here, and this is sort of one piece of that as well. The last two things, just really quickly, general, what I would say my personal takeaways from being part of the Food Too Good to Waste program. I think what's interesting is the EPA has taken the approach here, and I think that has actually worked really well working with lower income populations, that's sort of thinking about food as money, so that the opportunity of wasted food is less on this sort of environmental, getting into the guilt of people, and much more about throwing food away is money, and trying to really calculate how much could people save if they're reducing food waste. And I think that's a powerful message for people, especially when you're working with a household or when you're working with sort of on the consumer end. And the last one is, I think, visuals are powerful. When people actually see this thing filling up or fill one of these and have to empty it. One of the participants from the African Alliance said, this thing full of food waste sitting on the counter, you better bet that's going to start a conversation. Like that visually has some real power in a way that I think we often overlook. And I will end there and pass it off to Erica. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Erica Hansen. I'm here from the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. I've been with the food bank since 1997. And like all food banks, we acquire and distribute food, but in Rhode Island, we have a very robust nutrition education program, and we really see that program as a way to help people stretch their food budgets. So back in the 2013-2014, with Leo, we piloted this. I did, as one of the 40 families. And when the opportunity came about that our organization could become a Train the Trainer, we jumped right on board because it just fits right into what we're doing. So our nutrition education program is called Community Cooking, Wholesome Eating on a Budget. And we have a bunch of different modules. I won't get into too great detail about it. But the way we saw this fitting sort of right off the bat was with the Adults with Families program, because a lot of people who participated in those pilot groups were saying as little kids, there's a lot of food waste because they're trying foods and throwing food on the floor or eating half a plate of food. And it's really frustrating. But that's just what it is when you are raising children and have toddlers. So we thought that this would be a perfect fit because people could relate directly with the food waste. And so at the food bank, we trained 4 staff because we also felt that it was really important to go through this process ourselves so that we're just facilitating this information. We're teachers and we're learners as well. So we can talk about our own experience in doing this program in our own households. So the Adults with Family course is 8 weeks. It's 2 hours every week for 8 weeks. And we usually have a group of about 12 to 15 participants who represent their families. And the whole purpose of this is to provide participants with practical information that can be used to make healthier meal choices using food commonly found at the local food pantries. With our program starting in week 2, we provide the groceries for folks to bring home and try out what our chef did in class, and then they could experiment sort of on our dime, what worked, what didn't. And there's 3 things that we touch upon every single week. That's obviously nutrition, food budgeting, and food safety. So this program falls under the food budgeting piece, how to stretch your household dollars. And we boiled this down to, speaking about consumers, like a household level as a tool for low-income folks, and really anybody. But we wanted to show them by reducing food waste and just making small shifts like Leo had shown, they could really make a big difference in their food budgets at home. So during our food budgeting segments, we're just going to add 10 minutes on each week and talk about how food goes to waste, why it happens, why it matters, and what strategies can they employ on the household level. So the first 2 weeks of the program, we introduce I call it the countertop, the countertop waste bin, because it sits right on the counter, and we talk to them about establishing their baseline. And then the 3rd week, they talk about their experience and hopefully are surprised by the amount of food wasted. And then we start to teach them for the next 4 weeks one of those 4 tools. And it's up to them to choose one or do all of them. And in the last couple weeks, we have just like an open discussion, what worked, what best practices can they share amongst one another to lower the amount of food wasted in their household. So at the end of the 8 weeks, folks graduate. We call it a graduation, but it's basically they completed the program, and we asked them to take a short survey specifically about food too good to waste as well, so we can always continue to learn and tweak what we need to tweak. And then they get a $10 grocery store gift card for participating. We also broke this out into one other way folks can participate if they don't have 8 weeks to spend with us, and that's through a 3-part workshop, and it's geared towards folks who visit food pantries. So in week 1, we talk about why food waste is important, how it happens, and we do the baseline with the container. And then the next time we meet, we do the 4 tools. And the last workshop, I think, Leo, you talked about this a little bit, is lucky for us, we have a culinary nutritionist, so she does a meal based around the 4 tools. So she'll employ all these practices and show them, all right, well, let's cut up the entire broccoli, including the stem, and not throw that in the bin, because it actually is edible. And all the other, we're trying to empower people that that there's a lot of options and that they could make a really good, healthy meal on a very tight budget. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I have a couple of slides. Some of them might be repetitive. Let's see, should I just click this? Okay, that's Melissa. She's our culinary nutritionist. And lucky for us, she's trilingual, Spanish, English, Portuguese. And so every week they get goodies. So they get the bin and the tracking sheet, and then they get their shopping list. This is a nice little pad that they can stick up on their refrigerator. And then the storage. And those things. Oh, and that's not mine. So that's it.
That didn't show up so well. Hi, my name is Ronnie Neff, and I'm from the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future. And Dana also was one of the people that got me started in the field. So I'm going to talk about research and some of the research related to consumers. But first I'll just tell you, so our center, we're an academic center. We focus on the intersections between food systems and public health. And we've got a number of projects going on related to wasted food, both in the domain of consumers. We're also quantifying the nutritional content of wasted food in the country. We've done some work on seafood. We were analyzing policy targets like that 50% target and what people are doing about it. We've been working with farmers on crop donation, so lots of different types of things. But let's talk about consumers. And I want to just start with, in terms of research, the really important thing is that along with all the other work on wasted food, the research has been increasing at a very rapid pace. But there's still so much that we don't know, and there's so much need for more research, more depth, and more program evaluation. And all of you that are out there doing programs, I hope that you are also thinking about evaluation and recognizing that there are thousands, maybe millions of students out there looking for projects, and they can help you, in addition to also reaching out to researchers who would be very interested in partnering. Talking about consumer food waste, I think it's important to recognize this is a misnomer, because a lot of the factors that are going on that contribute to this waste are happening outside of the consumer level. And so a lot of people, and I definitely am not hearing it here, but a lot of people turn towards blame first, and it's really important to not frame it in a blaming sort of way. And the last big picture piece I want to mention is the value of looking at research outside of wasted food for the insights that it can give us about wasted food. And one thing that keeps coming to mind for me is some of the research on food access. And there was an insight that seemed intuitive that if you build a supermarket, everyone will come and they'll all eat the food. And what has been found as the research has developed in that field is that people don't necessarily come, and that there's a real need to build demand. And so as there's all this work going on to get healthy and fresh produce out to people, we really need to look at the demand side, take a good hard look at that. So I want to turn to some of our own research. This is from a national consumer survey. And one of the things, and we just asked people all kinds of questions about wasted food. And I'll highlight a few of the key findings that are particularly relevant for this conference. And the first one is this issue that the number one and number two reasons that people give for discarding food are concern about food poisoning and desire for eating high-quality food. And this has been replicated in studies. Many studies have found these same two things at the top of the list. And that's really important for a couple reasons. First of all, it points to the idea that we need to find ways to prevent that food from getting to that stage in the first place. Second, we know that consumers don't understand safety as well as they could. As was discussed in Sally's presentation, we really need to be focusing on improving date labeling policy. Third is that we in the nutrition community, in the foodie community, have created these ideas that people only need to eat the freshest food. And so there's a real need for more research to understand how do we change those notions about what kind of food would be most desirable to eat, that it could be frozen, it could be less beautiful, as has been discussed a lot. But we really need more research to understand how to get people there. The last thing I want to highlight about this is there's a lot of research pointing to the incredible power of perception. So it's not just that we know that food is perfectly safe or we know it's going to taste good. If people perceive that it won't taste good, that really matters and that really affects them. And so the fear and the yuck factor can really shape what people choose to do, even if they know rationally that this is okay. And I just came back from a conference in Canada the other day, and in Canada, the issue of wasted food, it's all about food justice, and that's all people wanted to talk about was, why are you giving us this food that's not good? And I don't think that conversation is really very strong here, but it's something to really keep an eye out for is, how do we make sure that the food is high quality and is perceived as high quality? Okay. Oh, these headlines. Okay. So you can't see that, but the headline says that we asked people what's their motivation for reducing their waste. Their biggest motivation is saving money. This is true across many studies, although, as was mentioned in the prior panel by Joanne Berkenkamp, there is some variation by geography. Second to that is a whole lot of ideas about responsibility, setting example for children, managing your household efficiently. The very last thing on the list is greenhouse gases, energy, and water. And so what we find is that even though many of us came into this work thinking about environment, it's not necessarily the thing that's going to grab consumers. And so we have to be thinking about that. And then, as was mentioned, many people see this as they're concerned, they're aware, but this is what someone else is doing, it's not me. So we asked people across all these 6 categories of foods, how much do you throw out? And this is the percentage that said that they throw out almost none in all of these categories. And basically, across all 6 categories, 37% of people said they throw out hardly any or none. And again, as was mentioned, 73% of people say that they waste less than the average American.
My favorite statistic ever.
So when it comes to behaviors, there's some really interesting research that involves following people around in their homes and taking them shopping and things like that, and really getting into the underlying qualitative pieces of it. And what that finds, which many of you are aware of, it's that these behaviors are not necessarily rational. They're complex, they're private, nobody's observing us, they're habitual, and they're not necessarily conceptually or temporally linked to the wastage. There's also a lot of good intentions that are driving the food that we throw out, as was mentioned. We want to be a good provider, a good host. We want to assure that we have a sense of security from having a full refrigerator. Finally, let me just summarize some of the key determinants of waste as shown in the literature. Low waste, some of the key determinants are perceived behavioral control, which means you think you have something that you can control this. And intention seems obvious, but it's not necessarily true for a lot of things that we try and change. But in this case, when we say we are going to reduce our waste, we often do. Shopping and planning routines and eating our leftovers are also predictors of low waste. Predictors of high waste, again, it goes back to this idea that we shouldn't be blaming people because unplanned changes to routines happen all the time. Catering to diverse family members, eating out, and then when we stockpile food at home, that also leads to high waste. The groups that are wasting the most are children, millennials, with seniors wasting the very least, those with solo households who have a lot of difficulty controlling the sizes of packages and things like that, and those who are wealthy. That's a brief summary. Thank you.
All right,
Not
thank
sure if
you,
that picture
everyone.
comes from Jordan's campaign or not.
Oh,
It's not mine, but I don't know whose it is, but I use it all the time.
it's a good one. It's a good one. Thank you all, and I think we have about a handful of minutes for questions. Does it not go to 3:30?
We started late.
We'll go to, we can take a few questions. But I wanted to, first of all, point out one of the stats that Ronnie didn't totally point out, but I love, my second favorite stat is that 40% of people who compost feel okay about throwing out food when they compost it, which is kind of interesting.
I agree with that.
And I also wanted to mention, with all of these surveys, I mean, data is so hard to get, and it's all self-reported, and that gets really complicated. And we did a lot of research behind the Ad Council campaign I showed you, and we are tracking everything very closely with surveys. And we're surveying like 12 different behaviors, and starting off, before the campaign is even kicked off, people are reporting, 80% of people reporting storing food properly. But my guess is they're not, right? They probably just don't even know exactly what that is. So I think it's a challenge, and one of the key insights of all the research behind the Save the Food campaign was people don't think they waste food. And so what we first need is a wake-up call. And the other key insight was wasting food is a byproduct of good intentions. So you want to host a good party, and so you have all this food, or you want to feed your kids healthy. And so, how do you sort of not knock some of those good intentions, but still wake them up to the fact that they're wasting food? So that was another thing. I also forgot to mention, if you want a really detailed guide, that there's a book that NRDC that I worked on called the Waste Free Kitchen Handbook that actually has, it's getting 2 thumbs up over there, everybody. Better get on Amazon right now. Yeah, but you're welcome to come take a look. It has a lot of other strategies around this stuff. Okay. I think because we don't have a lot of time, what I'd like to do is take about 3 questions, if there are, from the audience all together. And then we'll have our panel answer, whatever seems like you want to answer. So 1, 2, and then do we have well, we'll start with those 2, and if there's one more, we'll take it. Oh, okay. Then the one over there.
The question is for Leo. After you test, how long did the reduction effect last in those households? Do you know?
Oh.
Which, again, I think the data challenge is enormous. We didn't track it over then like a 6-month period, a year period, just for lack of staff capacity and resources. But I mean, I could tell you what I hope it is. I wouldn't know. I will say I do think these kinds of behavior changes, again, it's about routine change, and that's been mentioned in other, but I think, our hope is that most households would have one thing that they notice makes a significant difference, and that becomes part of their routine. And so I actually think that does have some lasting change. I don't know if it's 60% continued, and I think, again, there are unplanned events, or you host a dinner party and that produces more waste. So I think there's exceptions, but I think that's the kind of thing we should be focusing on. Like, how do you get people to, every time they're going to go shopping, look in their refrigerator before they go? Because if that becomes part of your shopping routine, that is a powerful change that actually has been shown to make a significant difference in not buying something you already have, or understanding what you have so you're better at purchasing appropriate quantities.
I also think if you kind of just look back at yourself, and when you first started waking up to this issue, if there was a time, and think if you've changed any of your behaviors. And in my observation, people will, like, just naturally, when you start waking up to it, you make little decisions differently, and you waste there's some portion of very easily avoidable waste that you kind of just naturally stop doing. And I hear about it all the time because people are like, oh, hey, I thought of you. I had these rotten tomatoes and, I made a sauce out of them and whatever. But, people start thinking about it and then they do things like that. So, yeah. So I think there's two different things there, right? So our Save the Food campaign works with the Ad Council, and they get donated media across the country. So they average about $30 million in donated media per year. So hopefully you'll start seeing that strawberry ad on TV and those best if used ads up on billboards around the country. So that's kind of the like I said, that 50,000 foot level. But who's going to go knock on doors? I mean, that's the program that you hear them describing in Rhode Island, right? It takes more than just saying save food, right? That might be able to get that first 5% of easily avoidable stuff. But after that, there are some kind of strategies and information. What I like to say about my book is it's information and inspiration to waste less, because you kind of need both, but it's a little bit more there's something more hands-on that needs to happen than just the Smokey the Bear level type of stuff. But hopefully we'll be seeing both. I mean, the Save the Food campaign just launched last month, or 2 months ago, and it takes a few months before these things actually get to the media. So hopefully coming to your TV screen soon.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentations. My question is also for the Rhode Island folks. I'm curious to know if you collected any information or if you just know from your experience, what was the motivating factor in families participating in the program? Thanks.
Why don't you kick off?
Okay.
Well, we do only see usually about 12 to 15 families per class, which is not a huge sensational number, but for whatever brings them there, interest in cooking or nutrition, they're there because they want to be, so it's never like a mandated shove down their throat kind of thing. And food budgeting is just one of the 3 topics that we discussed, so this just naturally built right into that. I think with our population, stretching their food dollar is something that's on the forefront of their minds all the time. So there's an interest in kind of preserving what they have and what they purchased, and using it to its greatest extent. And any tool, easy, like this is just making small shifts. If we went in and talked about, this huge problem about food waste and there's all these like high-level strategies to employ, I would get overwhelmed. But sticking this on your counter for 2 weeks and getting like a free shopping list that you stick on your refrigerator, and those Eat Me First stickers are so easy. And that is just like cracking the door open. And then I think another big piece of it is the last 2 weeks of the cooking classes is for them to have idea exchanges, because there's so much stuff like organically that comes out, like, oh, I have a 2-year-old too, and this is what we do, and we make baby food, or whatever it is. And so just facilitating this and providing an environment for people to talk about it, I think is awesome. I love that stuff. And then they tell their friends, and then they sign up for the next class, and they say, you get all this free stuff, and you get $10, and you get these groceries, and it doesn't really take much. So that's, yeah.
I would just add real quick, I think
it's definitely something we've struggled with is, should incentives be the program? And Erica mentioned, we did do in the original pilot, we gave people a gift card to, more like farmers market coins, because we wanted something that hopefully supported sort of the overall values we were trying to, that were behind this. But it's been a challenge. I think, we tried to make the branding on this look a little more aesthetically attractive. So the idea was like things that people would use in their house or want to put on their refrigerator. I don't know if that made a big difference. The other plug I'll make is Antonia Bryson, who's the current environment work group chair, who's kind of running the program. If I could get her to raise her hand. If you want to know more about sort of what we're seeing now, I would encourage you to talk to her as well.
So we're at time, but we started late. Is anyone from the organization factor are the organization police here? I don't know. Okay, no, we're gonna take one more question, and then we're gonna take a couple minutes to try to drive some action at the end of this. So, yes, in the back, just scream it out.
Well, I understand that, of course, there's a lot of ways to food that would go in there, but like, what about the strawberry tops or the carrot bottoms or the part of the broccoli down into the outer part that, like, it's not really edible. So, like, you compost and you put all your compost in that bucket, then
I appreciate all the Rhode Island love up here. So I'm happy to talk after too, but there is some education in the beginning about what is called sort of edible versus inedible. And again, I do think there's a real opportunity to link this program with educating people about composting. I mean, that would be the logical extension. But the idea is people would just measure food that could have been eaten but wasn't. That's the simple answer.
All right. So we are going to adjourn here in a second. But first of all, raise your hand if you have a Twitter account. Okay. So all of you can right now get on your phones and follow Ugly Fruit and Veg over here. Oh, and Save the Food has one too. Anyone else? Action number 1. Okay. How many of you would consider or are thinking about doing a food too good to waste like program in your community? A couple, okay. So maybe if you guys are, you could, right after we finish here, huddle up over in that corner and the Rhode Island folks will go with you and you can ask them some more tactical questions there. And is anyone interested on the research side around consumers and what they're doing or anything like that? All right. All right. So hopefully both Ronnie and Sally could link up with you guys. How about in that right corner right now and answer some more tactical or provide some more research questions for them to research in their surveys, really something like that. And I just want to close right now by saying, we are all consumers. So, things that work for you probably work for other people. And I don't think it's not a one-size-fits-all problem. And we're also kind of figuring it out as we go, right? I have a 1-year-old, and if you talked to me 6 months ago, I would have had a slide up here because I was very proud that I put this clear mat under her high chair so that when she started eating, like everything she threw down on the floor, I would just like pick it back up and give it back to her. I'd clean the mat before I fed her, and I thought I literally sat up here and did presentations saying, this is what innovation looks like in my house. Except that now she thinks that A, she can eat everything that falls on the floor no matter where we are. B, if she throws on the floor, it will come back up. And the biggest problem is that her arm's gotten a lot better, and it's now like the mat does nothing because it's like the entire dining room. So anyways, it's an evolution. We're all on this journey together, and hopefully we can meet back here again soon and hear about some of our successes. Thanks all. And all to the panel too.